Right now, we're standing by for more transcripts from the House January 6th Select Committee, which could be released at any time, shedding more light on the Capitol insurrection. CNN senior legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed is working the story for us. She's with me here in the Situation Room. Paula, among the new revelations, we're learning that Trump actually considered issuing what were called blanket pardons during the final days of his presidency.
That's exactly right. A former White House advisor testifying that in the days following January 6th, the final days of his administration, he was floating this idea of possibly issuing blanket pardons for people who participated in the Capitol attack, but the White House counsel rejected this idea. But this is notable because this is still something the former president is talking about today. He has said publicly that if he is reelected, he would consider offering pardons to some of the approximately 900 people who have been charged in the Capitol attack. Now, he also floated the idea of possibly offering blanket pardons to all of his White House staffers, though the White House counsel also interjected there and said, wait a second, that's not necessary because nobody here has done anything wrong. So it is interesting in these final days of his administration how he personally was weighing his pardon power. Well, we also learned there were lawmakers, including Representative Matt Gaetz, who, according to this witness, said that he sought a pardon through the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. He was allegedly concerned about an ongoing federal sex trafficking investigation. So a lot of new details in these transcripts, and we are expecting to get more transcripts over the next few days.
We certainly will be interested in that. In another transcript that has been released, we also learned that Trump supposedly was even considering conceding the election to Biden at one point. Is that right?
Exactly. According to these transcripts, that was the hot gossip around the White House, at least for a short time. This is according to a former press aide, Judd Deere. Now, I covered the White House during this time. Judd was one of the most accessible and more trusted advisors in the press office, and he testified before this committee that he had heard, quote, gossip, that yes, the former president was in the days following the election, perhaps willing to concede, even potentially thinking of inviting the Bidens to the White House. Now, of course, we know, well, that did not happen, but it all speaks to the chaos and the miscommunication in the White House in the time between the election and, of course, Inauguration Day.
Paula Reed, thank you very, very much. Excellent reporting as usual. Let's get some more on all of this. A key member of the House Select Committee and the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee is joining us, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's also the author, by the way, of the book Midnight in Washington, How We Almost Lost Our Democracy and Still Could. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. These transcripts that have now been released reveal that while Trump complained about his Vice President Mike Pence after January 6th, he actually pushed for pardons. So what does that suggest to you?
Well, it suggests that he understood that he may have committed federal crimes, that people around him may have committed federal crimes. And it is really breathtaking. It is, in many senses, like imagining an organized crime figure given the pardon power and the ability to use it, he believed, to protect anyone who was loyal to him. The fact that even now he talks about pardoning these people that were engaged in a violent attack on police officers defending the Capitol is really unthinkable, but it just shows the extreme nature of his narcissism, frankly, that he can't contemplate what it must look like to the rest of the country that he would pardon these people. But I think it's plain evidence of a consciousness of guilt on a massive scale.
Good point. The transcripts also recount how former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows actually burned documents leading up to January 6th. It's not clear what those documents were, but do you expect the U.S. Justice Department to pursue unanswered questions from your investigation?
Absolutely. I think they have an obligation to do so. And Wolf, one of the things that really concerns me as the chair of the Intelligence Committee is, according to Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, there were boxes of documents, classified documents taken from our committee, from the House Intelligence Committee, or from Republican staff, and perhaps Devin Nunes, carted off to the White House for who knows what purpose. We don't know what happened to those documents. We don't know whether some went home with Mark Meadows. We don't know if some ended up in the fireplace. She wasn't able to tell us the answer to those questions. But it is very strange that a congressional committee would be, or one party in that committee would be packaging up classified materials and bringing them in large scale to the White House for some reason.
So, but you don't know which documents were burned, whether they were classified or not, for example.
No, I don't. And I also don't know whether they took steps to take classified documents and declassify them somehow, or what process was being used, because that generally involves the agencies reviewing the materials, deciding what would be the danger if they were declassified. We really don't know what happened to those materials. We do know, I think, from Cassie Hutchinson, that some of those materials may have pertained to the Russia investigation, it would make a certain kind of grim, dark sense if that was the case. That Nunes and Republican staff were carting up Russia documents that they thought might be useful for Donald Trump. There's evidence in her testimony about Meadows sending some documents to friendly members of the press, including some that have been involved in unscrupulous activity, conservative media personalities. So a lot to be concerned about. I hope the Justice Department will get to the bottom of it.
Do you have any concerns, Congressman, about the precedent you're setting by releasing all of these transcripts in full, with Republicans about to take control of the House of Representatives?
No, I would be more concerned if we weren't releasing the transcripts, that Jim Jordan and others would cherry pick, information that was not disclosed and make it public in a misleading way, without revealing other material that contradicts whatever point they want to make. So I think the bigger risk is not releasing it. And there's a tradition this with the Russia investigation. We released those transcripts. I had to fight with Pat Cipollone and the Trump White House to be able to release those documents. They claimed some kind of executive right not to release them. But ultimately we prevailed and they were released. And of course, the Ukraine transcripts were also made public. So there's a long tradition of doing it. And I think it was the right call here.
Before I let you go, Congressman, I just want to ask you about your fellow committee member, Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He announced just a little while ago that he has a, quote, serious but curable form of cancer, and that he's about to start chemotherapy. What is your message to him during this clearly very difficult time, and how will you and your colleagues support him?
Well, I actually just sent him a message earlier today to wish him a speedy recovery, to tell him we're all pulling for him and sending him strength and hugs, and that we know that he will do fine. He will be just fine, and asked him, frankly, whether there was anything I could do. And he is one of our most beloved members, and if the well wishes and prayers of our members make the difference, and I hope and pray they will, he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, well said. We wish him a speedy recovery as well. He's been a frequent guest here in the Situation Room over the years. Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.